Hey folks, welcome to another episode of ASP.NET Core from Zero to Overkill. In this episode, we'll take a look at just some simple unit tests using xUnit because, well, we are past episode 30 and we haven't talked about unit tests, so it's a bit of a shame and an embarrassment, but okay, so we'll take a quick look at some simple tests, not going into very overkill stuff, because in the previous episodes we explored a bunch of more complex topics like identity server, Docker, ProxyKit, benchmark.net, and other stuff. So I thought it's probably a good idea to take a little break and get back to some fundamentals that we've been ignoring, namely the unit tests, which are kind of important, or a lot. Maybe not as important in this case because it's not a production application. We're just playing around. That's why I haven't really cared for tests. But I thought it's important to mention them so we don't forget how important they are. So, but because we don't have a lot of things very complex yet, okay, besides those topics, I thought we did some simple tests. We are going to use xUnit because it's one of the most popular unit testing frameworks, and I think it's the one that Microsoft is using right now for their own tests. So we'll create a really simple test just to see how it works. Then we are going to create a test to check when an exception is thrown. And finally, we'll look at how to write some tests that can be reused. So we just need to use different data. So we can provide a data source and run the same test to be sure that it works with different kinds of data. So like I said, it's simple stuff. We are not going to worry about more complex topics like mocking and not even async stuff, although async stuff in these tests is not particularly complex. Maybe concurrent stuff, but normal async stuff, not really. But yeah, for now, we're going to use the proxy API route lookup we've been playing around for the past couple of episodes. So in the last episode, we benchmarked it, and previously we used to implement things with ProxyKit. So we're going to use that same class to create some unit tests, and it's a simple class, so we will have some simple tests. And in the future, when we have some things that are more complex with business logic and stuff like that, we'll then create more complex tests with mocking and stuff. So the usual plugs: if the videos are being useful, please consider liking them, sharing to bring more people here, and leave feedback, which is probably the most important part, so I can improve and have other ideas. For instance, the tests were forgotten mostly by me, but someone commented, I don't remember if in a video or a blog post, and I thought, yeah, I should probably mention that in the video sooner rather than later, even if just some simple tests. So feedback is important, and also the other two. And also a reminder, I have the posts related to each video on my blog, and if you want to reach out, you can use Twitter, for example. Otherwise, you can check for more contacts on the blog or on my website. So with this out of the way, let's get to code. So let's get back to the topics. So xUnit, like I said, we're going to use xUnit, just the link if you want to check it out. But basically it's one of many available unit test frameworks, which is very popular. So I don't really have a lot of preference between them, but so just pick one, and this one is good, so I'll go with it. And of course, okay, not of course, but it was likely that it is open source, and part of the .NET Foundation. So let's get to work with it. So I already opened the solution here on Rider. So I have here source and the web front-end stuff, and we'll be testing this class. I made just some simplifications, got back to original version with a simple dictionary. In the future we might try to go back to that overkill solution with span and stuff like that, but for now, as it didn't bring a lot of advantages, we'll stick with the simplest one. Okay, so let's create a unit test project. We could do it over here, so add a new project, where it is, unit test, and unit, xUnit, MS test, stuff like that. But I'm going to do it from the command line because doing it from the IDE is too easy. You can do it. So let's get here. In the folder we have all of this. So I'll create a folder for the test projects. In this case we'll only have one, but maybe in the future when we have more libraries we'll have more projects. So normally it's not needed, but I tend to create one test project for one application project. So in this case we have a web project, and I'll create a test project for it. If we had more libraries, I would create a test project per library. Maybe it's stupid, but normally I do that just because of reasons. So let's create new directory, tests. Let's get in there. So, and we'll create a new project. So we want an xUnit project, so .NET new help to see the templates, and we have a lot of them, and somewhere we have xUnit and unit and MS test and stuff. So xUnit, so .NET new xUnit, and we want to output to a folder that I have the name here. So we'll create, it has basically the same name as the web project, but with a test appended. So it's creating. Okay, what's the pain? What the hell? Okay, now that one was unexpected. xUnit is over here. Couldn't find an install template. .NET version. Now let me just find something here on Google, or DuckDuckGo in this case. So let me just do something here, .NET, list SDKs, we have these SDKs. I'll go here. Check something. Just to be sure that the problem isn't that I'm using an SDK from because I have .NET Core 3.1 installed, the pre-release or what's its name. So let me try to put, by using this global JSON, .NET, instead of using the preview, we'll use this one. So will this work? Okay, that was the problem. So you shouldn't have this problem if you don't have the preview installed, but because I have the 3.1 preview installed, it created the project with the, it tried to create with that SDK, and for some reason didn't work. But as I pointed to the previous version, the 3.0, which is final, it works. So let's see, we have the project here. There's a project, so we can go back here, .NET SLN, add tests, and if we get to Rider, the new project is here, and we can remove this first test. So let's start by adding a reference to the web project, and we want to test this class, so I'll create a folder to keep like a mirror of the other project, and add a new class, tests. So I will use a single class to put all the tests, because they will be small, but sometimes if we have a lot of tests, probably a better idea is to split in multiple files. Yes, always that, don't annoy me. So let's start with a simple test. Let's take a look at this. So if you remember, the goal of this class is that we provide it a path, and it tries to match the start of the path to what it has in its dictionary configuration, and if it finds it, it maps it to an endpoint to which we will route the requests. So first test we can do is, for instance, trying to find a route when the configuration is empty. Maybe we shouldn't allow for the configuration to be empty, but yeah, at least it gives us the opportunity to create a test. So you can name your tests whatever you want, but normally I try to give it a name that tells what the test does, which sometimes ends up with the giant name, but it's a test. So public void, and then I'll call it when using an empty lookup dictionary, so that configuration is empty, then no route is matched. This will be the test. Now for xUnit to know that it needs to run the test, we use an attribute called fact. So this is basically tells this is a test method and that xUnit should run it. And now to test, we must provide what we want to test, which is the lookup. So var lookup equals new proxy API routing lookup. That gets a dictionary, so we'll give it an empty dictionary. So this is the subject under test, which is how sometimes people call it, which is the thing that we want to test. So it's configured. So it's sometimes we call it the arrange act assert. So this is the arrange part in which we configure things. Now in the act part we call the thing that we want to test. So in this case it is lookup var found equals lookup dot try get, and we'll put non-existent route, and we'll just discard the result because we just want to make sure it isn't found, so that result should have nothing. So this is the arrange part, the act part is calling the method, and then the assert part, which is basically want to assert. Assert is from xUnit. There are also alternative libraries, not only for tests but for assertions. So we can use xUnit with another assertion library. In this case, simple tests, we can use just the assertions that xUnit provides, and we assert that found is false. So we are giving an empty configuration, trying to get a route that doesn't exist there because it's empty, and just making sure that found is false. So I can go here and run unit tests, and it opens this little window here in Rider. Visual Studio is pretty similar, and the test passed. If I go here and put, or better yet, assert true, I wonder what will happen, and it fails because it was expecting one thing and got another. So let's get this back here, and we can run again. If you want to run it from the command line, we can do it. So .NET test, and ran the tests, and they passed, and it's all good. But of course it's more visual here, but we can, just to check it out, can put this here, run again, and it should say what was the problem. Yeah, the assert true was supposed to be false, and then shows us where the error happened. So this is really a simple test, but it is something we should cover to make sure everything is working as we expect. Now let's look at the class, and if you notice here on the constructor, what I'm doing when setting the field is, if it's null, we throw an argument null exception. So this is great for us to test exceptions. So let's get back here and we'll create another test. Public void when providing a null dictionary, then the constructor throws argument null exception. So giant name, what is it complaining? Exactly, it should mark as fact. I didn't know it warned, but nice to know. So fact. Some people, instead of just doing like I do here, put underscores between. Maybe it's more readable, but I find the underscores annoying, so I don't use them. But maybe it's more readable, so you can use that approach. So we want to test this exception. We could do try catch. Could do a try catch, for instance, and in here we would do lookup and pass null in here. And then here we would do assert for instance is type argument null exception, and put here the exception. We could do this, but because this is a kind of test that is normal to do, we don't need to do it this way. Instead we could do something like assert throws argument null exception, and we grab this and pass it here. So in this case we have to put the act in the middle of the assert, because we want to grab the exception, but it's really simple code. So if we no, I don't want to debug, but because I don't have a breakpoint, it should be the same, or almost. Try again, run, and it's all good. So this is a way to test if something throws an exception. Now, to wrap up, we're going to do some still simple but a bit more complex tests, like I mentioned here. So we have done this one and this one, and now we're going to try to execute the same tests but varying the data to check various corner cases. So we will do public void, and when looking up a non-existent route, then nothing is found. And what we'll do is we'll get a string with that route, and we'll see how that string gets its value. But before, we'll create a test. So I've prepared a bit here. So I'm creating the dictionary here with a test route and another test route that map to a couple of endpoints. So now we want to put some values in here. Instead of using the fact, what we'll use is a theory, which means that this test will not, instead of running by itself like these ones, we can provide a data source for it to run. One way, there are more ways, but the way I'll be using is to use inline data. And in here we can pass some arguments. And we can pass something like non-existent route, and then another one which is test route almost. So this is completely different. This part is equal to this one, but then has more things, so it shouldn't match. We can also do an empty string or null, and maybe there are more things that we could test out. But if you notice, this test is very similar to the first one. The difference is we are passing here a dictionary. This one is empty and this one has some values. And then, because we want to test multiple times, we can provide the data over here. There are also other options like passing like having an enumerable in a property or something like that, or maybe even reading it from an external data source. But for these tests, inline data is great. So, and then we match it and check if it's found. So I'll run this, and basically it will run the tests multiple times, and it even has, so the difference is, it's like there were 4 tests, even though we defined 1, it's like there were 4. Alternatively, we could do in a normal programming way, we could have multiple tests that vary this part and extract this part into a helper method. But this way it's clearer, maybe, and it's less work, because the framework, as it's a common scenario, the testing framework already provides us this. So I'll now create just a very similar test. I'll just copy it because it's almost the same. So this is basically, this is the same, so a theory, an inline data, but in this case these are routes that actually exist. So a test route matches this one, and this another test route with more segments matches this one, because the slash is what matters. Over here it didn't match because it wasn't just a segment, but in this case the segment matches. The rest are other things that will be mapped to the endpoint by our proxy kit implementation. In this case we are just matching. So in this case we want to get the endpoint. We are doing try get again, found should be true, and then we are asserting that the expected endpoint, which is what we get here, is equal to the endpoint that our class got. So in this case you see that in the inline data I pass in 2 values. So basically it then calls this method with these 2 values over here in the order that are here. They are put here, and then running is the same as the other one. Runs the tests, and there are 2 tests over here. So I guess that does it for this one. As I said, it's just a simple, I just wanted to provide a simple look at some unit tests because I've been ignoring them so far. And I'm pretty sure even this simple class needed some more tests. In fact, I already detected some bugs that we can test. For instance, what was it? Oh yeah, so the configuration over here, we are not checking, it's just a dictionary of string, and if the routes in there are not defined well, for instance if they have segments, which they shouldn't, this should be just a base path. So if they have segments, it won't work. So we need to create some validations over here besides just checking for null, and we should unit test those validations. But for now, as I just wanted a simple demo, this will do. And like I said, in the future we'll get back because there's much more to tests and xUnit than what I showed. I just showed really the basics, but most of the time it's enough just maybe mocking. Besides what I did here in the day-to-day when I write tests, I think mocking is what's missing. Besides that, I don't use a lot of other fancy features that they are there. Maybe I should, but normally I don't. So please take a look at xUnit docs for much more information than what I provided here. And of course the GitHub repo with a lot of info. But hopefully, of course, for the ones that have been following the overkill part, this will maybe be not new, but if someone is following along that is still not on the overkill level, this one was a more calm episode. And in the next ones, I think in the next one we'll migrate to .NET Core 3.0. I think it's what I have planned. And in the other ones, we'll try to get back to writing some business logic, because the project has been just doing technical stuff for a long time, and we need to add features. So hope you enjoyed it, and hope to see you in the next one. See yous!